Sonic Adventure 2, originally released for the Sega Dreamcast in 2001 and to critical acclaim, receiving very positive reviews from reviewers. However, after the discontinuing of the Dreamcast in early 2001, a port of Sonic Adventure 2 was later released for the Nintendo GameCube in early 2002. Reviews, however, were not as positive even though the game had been re-released 8 months later. I suppose what's interesting about all this is that fan acclaim for this game did not falter, and surprisingly, a lot of Sonic fans still believe that Sonic Adventure 2 is the best 3D Sonic game. So who's right? Is Sonic Adventure 2 worthy of all the praise it has received, or is it overrated? To start things off, let's look at the story. Now the game's story is split into two different perspectives, the Hero Campaign, which consists of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, and the Dark Campaign, which consists of Shadow, Eggman, and Rouge. While playing through both sides, you'll be able to see the story from two different perspectives, which is kind of an interesting concept. Unfortunately, the problem with this is that there really is no difference in the outcome of either side's story. Both stories end with the same conclusion and lead up to a final chapter and boss fight, where you have to use all 6 characters. As for what side appears to be the canonical side, it's up for debate, as some would say that Sonic destroyed the Eclipse canon, meaning that he beat Shadow, but at the same time, Eggman is able to insert the last Chaos Emerald into the canon controls, meaning that he beat Tails, but if he beat Tails, wouldn't he kill him or lock him up? But that's not true because he's seen at the end. I guess in the end it doesn't really matter, as this game doesn't really establish any new continuity, other than introducing Rouge and Shadow. The part of the moon that is destroyed isn't in other Sonic games. Shadow is brought back to life with some half-assed excuse. For some reason, Eggman wasn't locked up for trying to destroy the planet, and for destroying half the moon. And the sexual tension between Rouge and Knuckles and Sonic and Tails is never really readdressed. Now within each campaign, each character's levels have their own unique playstyle. Sonic and Shadow levels are pretty straightforward, as you pretty much just follow a linear path to get to the goal. Most levels have a few alternate paths that you can explore where you can find upgrades for newer enhanced moves. Gameplay wise, Sonic and Shadow are pretty floaty. They both feel very light and their attacks tend to be very finicky. While using a homing attack, there's about a 50% chance that they'll miss, which in turn can lead you to falling to your death. Along with the homing attack, the light dash also has its problems, as most of the time hitting the button to activate it ends up making them do a somersault instead. It's even more frustrating when they don't connect with a string of rings over a pit and you end up dying because of it. There are also problems with the grinding mechanic, as it's nearly impossible to jump between grind rails without flying off and dying. Believe it or not though, with all of their problems, out of the 3 level types, the Sonic and Shadow ones are designed better and more fun to play than the others. And that's saying something considering how many problems they have. Tails and Eggman levels put the players in these mechs and turn the game into a quasi third-person shooter. Again, these levels are pretty linear with a few hidden areas. Control-wise, the mechs control as well as a 2-legged dog. Moving forward works well enough, but turning is an absolute bitch, and it's usually hard to angle yourself when trying to lock onto multiple enemies. Speaking of enemies, one of the main points of the shooting levels is to lock onto multiple targets at once to rack up points. However, like I said earlier, turning to lock onto enemies doesn't work well, and usually trying to lock onto large groups of enemies results in you getting shot and losing all of your targets. Finally, the Knuckles and Rouge levels involve looking for pieces of the Master Emerald. Most levels are pretty open-ended, and levels during the end of the game are way bigger than they should be. Gameplay-wise, most people will agree that the Knuckles and Rouge levels are the worst, as it can be difficult to navigate some levels to find the treasure you are looking for. However, there are hints that you can follow to make it easier to locate the treasure, and there is sort of a hot-cold indicator at the bottom of the screen that blinks red when you are close to your objective. The problem with this though is that looking at the hint screens penalizes the player, as you'll get a lower score the more hints you look at, and the hot-cold indicator only works for one certain treasure at a time. This means that you can end up passing treasure pieces until you find the specified one. Oh, and the controls for the car segments are fucking awful. The enemies and enemy placement in the game seem to be very cheap. Most of the time, enemies will seem to pop up out of nowhere, causing you to run into them. This is nothing new to Sonic Adventure 2. Every Sonic game is filled with this bullshit, but it doesn't change the fact that it's annoying every time it happens. Not only that, but when trying to attack enemies, you'll often jump right into one of their attacks. Case in point, this asshole here. Every time I try and jump up and attack, I get shot until he eventually kills me. Trying to avoid them is just as bad, as you'll often get shot in the back or hit with those stupid artificial chaos arms. For some reason, the bosses in the game seem to be severely lacking in design and difficulty. For a lot of the bosses, you'll fight the same ones in both the Hero and Dark campaigns. The only real difficulty in the boss battles was the camera, as it was sometimes hard to get a lock on your enemy, which would usually leave you open to an attack, or even worse, missing your opportunity to attack. I'm just going to gloss over the graphics since they're mostly alright considering how old this game is, but one thing I noticed is how fucking ugly and downright freaky the human models are for this game. They're so robotic and weird looking that I can't believe that they would have been considered good looking 10 years ago. As for the music, one thing that Sega is good at is having good music for their Sonic games, and Sonic Adventure 2 is no exception. Except for those god-awful Knuckles songs. Fuck me, those were bad. Here's an example of what I'm talking about.
This is Knuckles, and I'm back. I've been away for a while, but I'm back to kick some butt and wild candy. I shall find all the lost pieces of the Master Emerald here. I'm gonna get those fools. They wanna play with my emeralds? They playing with the wrong guy. Heck, I don't know. That's what I'm representing. Never seen a Mike Hogg spit like a menace. Wild candy.
The thing that was really weird with the music was that in some cutscenes the music seemed to play over the dialogue, making it hard to hear what the characters were saying. Not that any of it was important, but still, it's really annoying when you're trying to hear what someone is saying and all you can hear is "I am the Eggman." Now to say that the camera in Sonic Adventure 2 is bad is an understatement, as you're constantly struggling to see what's going on around you. In Sonic and Shadow levels, it's not really that big of an issue, as the camera is mainly focused behind you, and you really only have to run in a straight line, so there's less of an instance of the camera fucking up. In Tails and Eggman levels, the camera becomes a problem when you try to target multiple enemies, and when changing direction, the camera sometimes has a problem refocusing behind you. There are similar issues with Knuckles and Rouge stages, as the camera doesn't automatically snap behind you when you change direction while flying. Now one of the main issues with this game is that it's not really about Sonic. If you really go back and think about it, Sonic's whole part in the story is rather irrelevant, as the game really mostly revolves around Shadow and how he turns from a villain to a hero. This wouldn't be so bad except for the fact that Shadow really is just a Sonic clone. When we first meet Shadow in Sonic's campaign, it is shown that he is able to use the Chaos Emeralds to manipulate time, something Sonic is unable to do. However, as the game progresses, Sonic eventually learns how to use Chaos Control. Alright then, I guess it's possible, but at least Sonic is the only one who can harness the Chaos Emeralds to become Super Sonic. Oh, I guess not. You see, at the end of the game apparently, Shadow has the ability to become Super Shadow as well, basically making the only difference between the two their color palettes and their designs. However, even the designs are similar, as Shadow and even Super Shadow are really just a different shade of color than Super Sonic. The point I'm trying to make is that Shadow really shouldn't exist at all, as he's basically just a darker Sonic in color and personality. I mean, I guess for some that would be enough, but I don't see the point in creating a new character, designing a story around them, and then giving them the same abilities as your established titular character. It just doesn't make any sense. Another thing I don't really understand is why they felt compelled to kill him off. I mean, Sonic comes back at the end, why doesn't Shadow? I know Shadow isn't really dead, as he's been put into other Sonic games, but there's really no explanation for his death. Now I'd be remiss if I didn't mention everyone's favorite part of Sonic Adventure 2, the Chow Garden. For some reason, people love the Chow Garden, however it's little more than a basic virtual pet simulator. I'll admit that when I was younger, I spent a lot of time raising and hatching chows, but now it just seems like a time filler more than anything else, and doesn't really serve any purpose in the main game, other than to what, get like 5 extra emeralds for playing the stupid minigames, which really isn't a justified reason to have it. Overall, this game has a lot of problems, story-wise and gameplay-wise. I'll admit that I like Sonic's movements better in this game than any other recent Sonic game, but that's really not enough to excuse all the other issues that this game has. To say this game is remotely good is a huge overstatement, as a game released with these kinds of issues will be lauded as absolute shit today. I think the reason that most people say that Sonic Adventure 2 is the best Sonic game is pure nostalgia. I'm sure most people played this game when they were relatively young, and at the time it was sort of groundbreaking design-wise and gameplay-wise for a Sonic game. However, this doesn't change the fact that this game is overrated. In no way, shape, or form has this game aged well, and control-wise it's an absolute mess. What kills me even more is the fact that most people are willing to admit that the Tails Eggman stages and Knuckles Rouge stages aren't good, but they won't admit that Sonic Adventure 2 is a bad game. I mean, when only 1/3 of your game can even be considered fun, it's hard to defend it as one of the best Sonic games. So was this game overrated? Absolutely, unless you're willing to overlook the many flaws that this game has.
That hurt. No time to hang out with the likes of you.